Hi, welcome back to our class, Psych 1. And this is week 11, and we are going to talk about the two topics in this lecture, motivation and emotion. And I think you have read the textbook, which is chapter 10, about these two topics. And in this lecture, we are going to talk about something that is not mentioned in the textbook. So usually in this class, we just talk about the things that are covered in the textbook. But in this week, we are going to talk about something that the textbook does not mention. And I think those things, those knowledge is the stuff that we must know or we need to know about, but the textbook does not mention. So this week is a little bit different from previous weeks. So let's start the lecture for this week. So please think about these two questions before we talk about motivation and emotion stuff. So why do you go to college? So this is a question that is worth thinking about. And the second question is, why do you come to this class? To learn psychology, to learn some stuff in psychology. So why do you do that? So you can pause the video and think about these two questions carefully. Spend a few minutes to think about these two questions. So these two questions are very, I think that those questions, these two questions are very important and also interesting because they ask about the reason to do something, right? So what is the reason for you to go to college? Why go to traffic college? Why do you choose this class to have this class? So what are the reasons for doing all these things? There must be some reasons behind your actions, right? So what drive you to engage in those activities, going to college and coming to this class? Why is that? So this is the also a very important topic in psychology, which is about the the drives of doing something or the reasons behind doing something for everyone. So that is about motivation. So let's talk about motivation first. So what is motivation? In the textbook, the formal definition of motivation is the wants and needs that direct behavior toward a goal. So the motivation is something that people want or something that people need. They need something, so they go and get it. Or they want something, they really want to do something, or they really want something, get something, so they go and get it. So those wants and needs direct behavior or drive behavior. And there is a goal that in that goal, the person has some kind of wants and needs that they want to get. So toward that goal, they have some kind of actions. They have some kind of behaviors because of those needs and wants. So those needs and wants are motivation. So motivation is something that can motivate you to do things. So that is motivation. So there are different kinds of motivation. Motivation is not just a one thing, or it's not just a very simple concept, but there are different kinds or different types of motivation involved in everyday's behavior. So let's see. The first type is called the biological drive. That is the basic biological need which is from your physical body, such as the hunger, such as the thirst. You can be thirsty, can be hungry, such as the need for warmth. You can be feeling really cold, so you need warmth. And other needs, such as the need for physical security, right? So you need stay in a environment that is safe enough for you to stay. So these needs and wants are from the biology, from the physiological drive. So these are biological drives. But there is also motivation that is not about biological. That is about psychological. So something that you want is not from your physical body, but from your mind. So there are also psychological drives. So there is a kind of a motivation that is called intrinsic motivation. So what is intrinsic motivation? Sometimes a person does something just because he or she wants to do it. So the person engaged in that activity just for the sake of the activity itself. So, for example, I like playing the video game, a kind of a video game. So if you ask me, why do you like playing video games? I will answer you like, I just like playing video games. That's it. I just want to do it. And if you keep asking, why do you want to do it? What do you want to get? I may answer like, nothing I want to get. I just want to play it. I just want to play video games. That's it. I just want to do it. I play the video game because I want to do it. I want to play it. That's it. So that is about intrinsic motivation. The purpose of doing that thing is inside of that thing. It is the purpose of doing it is doing it. The purpose of that activity is inside of that activity. That is intrinsic motivation. That is why it's called intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic means like internal or something inside. So the purpose of doing that thing is inside of that thing. So when we are intrinsically motivated or when we have intrinsic motivation, so when we are interested in doing something, in that moment, we can say we are intrinsically motivated. So that is what when intrinsic motivation comes to our mind. So when we are interested in doing something, we are intrinsically motivated. For example, I'm really interested in playing certain video games, such as Battlefield. That is a shooting game. Probably some of you know that game. There are different series. There is a series of battlefields. There are different kinds of battlefields. So I just like playing that video game. That's it. So when I am really interested in playing that video game, I'm intrinsically motivated. So that is about intrinsic motivation. And also, what's the reason behind doing it? So why do I like doing it? Because when I am doing that activity, I get the reward. The reward is not from outside. This reward is inside, is internal reward. In other words, the process of doing that thing itself is a reward. So when I am doing it, I'm getting that reward. That reward is not something else. It's the process of doing it itself. So we say that when we are intrinsically motivated, we get the internal rewards. So you can like think about this concept and compare that with your life. So you can think about the moments that you are really interested in doing something. You are doing that thing not because you want to get something else. You just want to do it. right? So when you do it, why do you do it? Because you get the reward when you are doing it. So think about that moment. That is intrinsic motivation. And another type of psychological drive is called extrinsic motivation. So that is compared to, in contrast with the intrinsic motivation. So in extrinsic, this word basically means external or something that is outside. So extrinsic motivation happens when the person engages in that activity for other purposes, not for the purpose of doing that activity, but the purpose itself is outside of this activity. For example, I want to play the video game because I get paid for playing that video game. I want to get money. The money is outside of that activity, right? So if there is a case that somebody pays me to play the video game, so I do it. I play the video game, but I'm not interested in playing that video game. What I'm interested in is the money that I get after playing it. So in this case, I'm extrinsically motivated. The motivation that that is involved is called extrinsic motivation. I'm doing that activity for another or other purposes. The purpose of that activity is not inside but outside of that activity. And yeah, so there are different situations when one is involved in extrinsic motivation. So for example, the first case is that if somebody wants to get external rewards, for example, the example I just mentioned, I do this because I want to get money. Another case or situation is that sometimes people want to avoid punishment, external punishment. For example, something like young David wants the David is really honest because every time David is lying and David's parents spank him, for example. So to avoid this external punishment of being spanked, young David is honest. He is honest not because he wants to be or he is interested to be honest, just because he wants to avoid the punishment. So in this case, that is also an extrinsic motivation, right? So getting the reward and avoiding some kind of the punishments are in the same nature, right? So they want to get something that is outside of this activity. And in the third situation, sometimes people they have some kind of psychological states that are really negative, such as guilty, such as shameful. So sometimes people are like really feeling really guilty or shameful. So they want to avoid this negative psychological states. So they do something to reduce them. For example, sometimes people hurt others, so they feel guilty. So they help that person to go to hospital or help that person to recover from the harm, not because they are interested in helping others, just because they want to reduce their guilt inside of their mind. And in another situation that sometimes people are doing something just because there are other goals. They must do this activity to achieve another goal. For example, if you want to go to college, the college is really far away from your home, for example. You need to drive the car to go to college to have class. For example, so if there's no online class, there's only like offline class. You need to go to the college, show up in the classroom, and listen to the lecture, listen to the instructor to talk about the stuff in the class. So this time you in order to go to class, in order to go into class, you need to drive your car to the college and park car. Are you interested in driving to college? Are you interested in parking the car in the college? In most cases, I guess not. You are not interested in driving the car and go to college. Of course, sometimes some people are interested in driving. Driving is fun sometimes, but in a lot of times, commuting is just commuting, right? So it's not something that they want to do, they are interested to do, but they have to do. They have to commute between the school and home. So sometimes if you want to reach your goal, you need to do something that you do not like doing, or you're not interested in doing that. So the reward is from other resources. So in this case, when there is extrinsic motivation, the reward is not from doing that activity itself. The reward is from other places, such as external rewards. For example, the money. I go to work, I get money, I get paid. Why I go to work? Because I get paid. I want to get external rewards or other people's requirements. Other people may ask you to do something. You are not interested in doing that, but other people require you to do that. Your parents require you to wake up early in the morning. For example, you gotta do that. You have to do that. Or you have some kind of beliefs that I have to do this. I have to be like this. For example, in order to go into the class, to go to college, I have to drive my car to the college. So there's probably another way, like taking the bus. So that is the worst choice, I think. The driving your own car to the college may be a better choice. But you have to take some form of like transportation to the college. So you have some kind of a beliefs that I have to do this. In order to do this, I have to do this. Those kind of beliefs make you to engage in that activity to get that reward. And in those cases, extrinsic motivation is involved. So right now we can tell the difference between intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. A key difference is that what is the purpose? Where is the purpose located? If that purpose is just about doing that activity, that is intrinsic motivation. If the purpose is outside of that activity, the person wants to get something else, to get reward, to avoid punishment, to get to listen to other people's requirements, or they believe that they have to do something. In those cases, that is extrinsic motivation. So intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, they are both psychological. So that is not really about biological side, not really about your physical body, but more about the stuff that you want, the things that you need. So you psychological feeling that you need to do that. So these two kinds of motivation are more about psychological. So the next thing I want to talk about is that sometimes doing one activity can be both intrinsically motivated or extrinsically motivated. Sometimes, yeah, there's no example, but sometimes you're interested in doing that activity, but at the same time, by doing that activity, you can get some kind of external reward. For example, you like study math, and that is your intrinsic motivation, right? So you like studying math, you like doing mathematical questions, but through doing mathematical questions, you can get practice, you can get good, can be good at mathematics, you can be like some kind of engineers in the future. So being a engineer is a external reward for studying mathematics. So the extrinsic and intrinsic motivation can exist at the same time. So doing one thing, there can be multiple reasons. There can be multiple reasons. There not need to be just one reason. Sometimes we do something because of a lot of reasons. But sometimes extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, they cannot they cannot exist both. They cannot coexist. Why is that? Because the nature of the motivation or the type of motivation can change. Extrinsic motivation can transfer to intrinsic motivation, and intrinsic motivation can transfer to extrinsic motivation. So the nature of the motivation can change in the process, in the procedure of doing that activity. So the first case is that extrinsic motivation becomes intrinsic motivation. I think I believe that this process is relatively hard to happen. For example, when one wants to get the college degree, that person goes to college and take different classes, different courses. Later, that person becomes interested in learning in college. So that may happen. So sometimes we are doing something because of the extrinsic motivation. We want to get something else. We have some goals. So we have to engage in some activities that we are not interested in. But later, we might get interested in doing that activity. We didn't found the interest in that activity, but later we found it. We found the interest in doing that. That happens sometimes. And the second process, I think that is relatively frequent, more frequent and easier to happen. That is, in that process, intrinsic motivation becomes extrinsic motivation. I think this is more and more frequently to happen compared to this process, extrinsic motivation to becomes intrinsic motivation. So when does this process happen? Intrinsic becomes extrinsic. When the person gets the external rewards or gets the external punishments, the person gradually loses the genuine interest in that activity. So for example, if I like playing video games, like playing Battlefield, I get nothing for playing that. So I just want to play it all the time. And someday, and somebody gets me and said, I can pay you if you play that video game. So I get paid for playing that video game. I'm happy, right? So why I can play the video game and I can get money. But later in the process, gradually I lose the interest. I lose the interest in playing the video game because I get paid. because those external rewards or punishments can destroy my interest in doing that activity. So that is really frequently to happen for everyone, for children, for adults, for everyone. So when we get the external rewards or punishments for doing something, there is a high frequency that we do not have the interest in doing that activity. We lost interest in doing that activity once we get paid or once we get external rewards. So why is that? Why that happen? When people get external rewards or external punishments, they forget the original reason. The original reason is like interest. I get internal rewards for doing that. Namely, in other words, I just enjoy the process of doing that. I enjoy the process. I do that because I want to do that. I enjoy the process. However, when I get the external rewards, I gradually forget the original reason. I gradually believe that I do it because I want to get the rewards or punishment. So in this case, I gradually lose the interest in doing that activity. So this is really frequent to happen, really likely to happen. This phenomenon is called justification effect. So it's over justification effect. It means that people over justify the reason for doing some kind of activity. So at the beginning, I'm interested in it. That's the justification, right? So that's the really good reason. And later I get rewards. I use that reason for explain my behavior. That is over justification. I over justify that activity. So this is this phenomenon or this effect give us a very important suggestion or implication that in education or any kinds of education, when the children or when people or students get those external rewards, when they start to get external rewards for doing something, for example, for get the external rewards for learning, for getting a good grade, they gradually lose the interest in learning or interest in doing something else. That is the implication. So we must be really cautious about giving some kind of external rewards or giving punishments to children or to students, to anybody we give the education or anybody we teach. Because those external rewards or punishments are likely to destroy the interest, destroy the genuine interest, destroy the intrinsic motivation, make them to have extrinsic motivation instead of intrinsic motivation. So when we use the external rewards or punishments to control them, to control their behaviors or to educate them, and we can talk about the outcomes of intrinsic motivation. So why intrinsic motivation is important? So there are some outcomes of intrinsic motivation. So this is not a exhaustive list. There are other outcomes of intrinsic motivation as well, but I think these three are very, very important outcomes of intrinsic motivation. So when people are intrinsically motivated, first, they are happy when they are intrinsically motivated. They have pleasure, they have the positive emotion, they have the happiness. So that is very important, because the feeling of being happy, or the feeling of happiness, comes from having a lot of positive emotion. So intrinsically motivated and doing something brings the feeling of happiness and pleasure. And the second outcome of intrinsic motivation is the concentration in that activity, the attention. People paid full attention to that activity when that person is intrinsically motivated to do that. In other words, when someone is really interested in doing that activity, that person is so concentrated, so focused on that activity. So pay the full attention to doing that activity, so involved in that activity, because the person is so interested in that activity. So I think that is easy to understand, because every one of us had that experience before. So when we are really interested in doing something, we are just so focused. Our mind is so focused on doing that activity. We just want to do it well, right? So, for example, playing a video game. So, for example, if I'm really interested in playing the video game Battlefield, I'm so focused when I'm playing it. I'm so concentrated in playing that video game. And sometimes I forget the time, I forget other people, I forget to do something I need to do. There's one case that I'm interested not in the Battlefield. That is the example. So I'm interested in another video game that is a strategy game. So the player need to control a country to expand the country and have wars with other countries, and earn money, right? So to develop this country. So that kind of game is kind of a strategy game. It's like a civilization, but it's not a civilization. I'm so concentrated every time I play that video game. So there's one time that I played the whole night. I stayed up whole night playing it. I didn't stop. I just didn't stop. I don't have time to have dinner. I don't have time to sleep. So if you ask me why didn't you sleep at night? Why you spend the whole night playing that video game? I will answer like, I don't have the time. I'm so focused. I'm so concentrated. I'm so busy in that game. I don't have time for sleeping and eating and drinking. So that is part of intrinsic motivation, because I'm so interested in playing that video game. So I'm so concentrated in playing, in doing that activity. Another outcome of intrinsic motivation is performance. Because why? Because when you are doing it, you are happy. You are so happy, and your overall state is very good because you are happy. And at the same time, you're so concentrated in doing that activity. You use all the resources in your mind, in your brain, to do that activity well. So no wonder if you are interested in that activity for a long time, you are so interested, you are so concentrated in that activity. Every time you're engaging in that activity, the performance must be better, right? So the performance, you do that well after you doing that for many times. So in the long run, the outcome of intrinsic motivation is higher performance. You do something well when you're interested, because you do that with your full heart, with your full attention, and you do that a lot of times. You spend a lot of time doing that. So that is why you can get higher or better performance if you are interested in doing something. So there is one example, one real example. This guy is called Michael Phelps. This guy is a professional swimmer in the United States. He's from New York or somewhere else. So he's a professional American swimmer. He was so interested in swimming, and his achievement is amazing. He joined the Olympics for 3 times. He joined the Olympics in 2004, 2008, and 2012. And in total, he got 28 medals, Olympic medals. So 23 of them are gold medals. So imagine that one person get 28 medals out of the 3 times of Olympics. And 23 of them are gold medals. So that is a really amazing achievement for any person on earth. So any professional swimmers, that is a very that is a dreaming achievement. So why he is so powerful? Why he is so strong in swimming? I heard of his story once before. He was so interested in swimming. He got the training of professional swimming every day. He got trained for like more than 10 hours every day. He just swims every day. And I heard that he even called his coach come to the swimming pool when that is Christmas Eve. So in the Christmas Eve, he called his coach, come to the swimming pool. I need to get training. So he got trained in the Christmas Eve, December 24th, on that night. He go to the swimming pool, he go to the gym and get trained. That is his story. He's so involved, he is so interested in swimming that he got trained every day, no matter it's Christmas Eve or no matter it's Thanksgiving holiday, no matter what day it is, he must go to the swimming pool and get trained. So that is why he got so high achievement, so many gold medals in Olympics. So that is the power of intrinsic motivation. So why do I talk about this? Because I think intrinsic motivation is a very powerful thing that we can have, but it's a resource that is easily to be vanished, or that is a resource that is easily to disappear, because we found that because of over-justification effect, intrinsic motivation is easily to become extrinsic motivation. Sometimes we get the external rewards for doing something. Sometimes we get punishments for not doing something or doing something. We gradually just lose the interest in doing that thing. But interest or intrinsic motivation are so important, so valuable for us, for everyone, because it brings pleasure, brings happiness, it brings the concentration in doing that, it brings performance, it finally brings achievements, brings success in our life. But it's very easily to disappear or to be vanished. So my suggestion is like value your intrinsic motivation, value your interest, genuine interest. You can protect your genuine interest and intrinsic motivation. So how to protect or how to improve intrinsic motivation? So in what case we can have intrinsic motivation? So next we can talk about this a little bit. What factor improve intrinsic motivation? So the two psychologists, Ryan DC and Richard Ryan and Ryan DC, and these are two psychologists. They spend most of the time in their life, like they spend like more than 20 years to study intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation, and the reasons for why people are intrinsically motivated, and the ways to improve intrinsic motivation. The two psychologists found that there are three things that we need to have to improve or to have intrinsic motivation. These three things are autonomy and competence and the relatedness. So they found that if somebody has the experience of autonomy, competence, and relatedness, that person is more likely to have intrinsic motivation in doing that activity. So in other words, if that person is doing something in that moment, in that process, if that person has the experience at the same time, that person has the experience of autonomy, competence, and relatedness, that person is really likely to be intrinsically motivated in doing that activity. So what are the three experiences? So autonomy is the desire or the need to experience that the person is interested or has the preference engaging in that activity. So autonomy, usually autonomy means that one has the freedom of doing something, or one has the freedom to arrange their own life. So in this case, autonomy means that the experience that one has the freedom of doing something. One has the interest of doing something. One has the preference of doing that thing. When people has the autonomy, people regulate their own behaviors or choose what to do or choose their behaviors based on volition, based on free will, rather than external controls. So in other words, they're not controlled by other people or other things. Their behaviors are based on their own preference, their own volition, their own free will. So they have the control of their own behaviors. They have the autonomy. The other people or other things do not have the control over them. So they have the freedom or choice to engage in that activity. They have the freedom to engage or not engage in any moment. They have a freedom of choosing certain ways to engage in that activity. The second experience is called competence. So what is competence? So when we see someone is competent, it means that that was able to do that thing, right? So it's like a confident or is has the skills. In this case, in this scenario, competence means that the desire to experience that somebody is successful or effective in doing that activity. So not only has the freedom to engage in that activity, but the second experience is that the one has the experience that, oh, that person is successful, that person is effective when doing that activity. In other words, that person is able to do that thing well. That is a feeling of competence. So people have the wants to succeed and master the challenging tasks in that activity. So when somebody does something well, when one does that thing successfully, that is the experience of competence. The third case is relatedness. So that is the desire to be emotionally connected and interpersonally involved in interpersonal relationships, in good relationships. People have the wants and the needs to love others and get the love from others. Everyone wants to be loved and wants to love others. Everyone wants to get the trust from others, and everyone wants to trust others. So we humans really want to get really meaningful and deep connections, relationships with other people. So in nature, we humans want to build connections among people, among different individuals. So that is the feeling of or experience of relatedness. So these are the three kinds of experiences. So the basic logic is that when we are doing something, if we can feel at least one of the three experiences, such as autonomy, such as competence, such as relatedness, if we can feel that we have the freedom to engage in this activity, we can do well in this activity, or we can build deep connections with other people in this activity. We have the interest, we have a preference in doing this activity. In this case, we are more likely to have the intrinsic motivation to engage, to keep engaging in this activity. For why? Why we have intrinsic motivation? Because we can feel, we can experience autonomy, we can experience competence, we can experience relatedness, right? So autonomy, competence, and relatedness, those are the things that we want. We want those things. If we can get those things in doing that activity, we can have intrinsic motivation. We do not need other kinds of rewards, such as money, such as like other people's praise or other kinds of benefits. We just want to do that because we have the need to experience autonomy, competence, and relatedness. So far, this knowledge, where is this knowledge from? Knowledge is from a theory called self-determination theory. The textbook does not mention this theory, and I do not write down the name of this theory, but you can know it if you want. It's called the self-determination theory. So this knowledge is from this theory is invented or developed by Ryan and DC. These are two the last names of these two professors or psychologists. So we can now we can know self-determination theory, Ryan DC. So now we can know that how to improve intrinsic motivation. So if we engage in some kind of activities that in which we can have the possibility to experience we are autonomous, we are competent, or we can have deep connections with other people. there's high frequency that we can be interested or we can be intrinsically motivated in doing that activity. And there are really important benefits of intrinsic motivation, which we just mentioned: the pleasure or happiness, the feeling of happiness, the concentration in that activity, and the performance. And finally, we can have good achievements and we can have a better life. So the key here is the experience of autonomy, competence, and relatedness. And we can go to next theory. So we just talk about the stuff in self-determination theory, and now we can talk about another theory about motivation. So self-determination theory actually covers the two kinds of a psychological motivation, which are like intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. But drive theory here talks about the stuff about the biological drive. So it explains why we have the biological drives. So why do people have biological drives? In it, from the knowledge of drive theory, because there is the deviations from the homeostasis. So homeostasis is a state in our physical body that is an ideal state in our physical body. So any deviations from homeostasis cause the people to have biological drives. So homeostasis is a state in which our body is running the best. The body that is ideal state. So, but a lot of times, our physical body cannot reach the homeostasis. There is deviation, or there's difference, there's distance between the homeostasis and the current state. So when there is the distance or deviations between the homeostasis and our current biological state, there is biological drive. Biological drive appears because there is the deviations from the homeostasis. And when the homeostasis is maintained or it returns to the homeostasis, those biological drives disappear. So biological drive does not exist all the time. It sometimes appears, sometimes disappears. Depends on the distance between the current state and the homeostasis. So there is the concrete example that we can understand this more. For example, when there is not enough nutrition, such as sugar and protein, in our physical body, we are hungry. We have a feeling of hungry. So why we are hungry? Because sometimes why we are hungry, because there is not enough nutrition in our physical body. Nutrition includes, for example, sugar, protein, and fat, and other stuff. When our physical body lacks of those nutrition, we can have a feeling of hunger, because hunger is a state that is about the deviation from the homeostasis, about nutrition. So there is a balance or homeostasis about the nutrition in the physical body. That is one kind of the homeostasis. There are a lot of kinds of homeostasis. There are homeostasis about the level of nutrition, the level of water inside of the physical body, and the level of temperature. The body temperature also has a homeostasis. So when we do not get enough nutrition at that moment, we are hungry. Hunger is one kind of a typical biological drive. And thirst is also a kind of a biological drive. Why are we thirsty? That is because we do not have enough water in our physical body. There is a deviation from the homeostasis about the water level. Sometimes why we feel cold, why we need warmth, more warmth. That is because our body temperature is too low. So we feel freezing, right? So those are all the biological drives. Biological drives appear because there are deviations from homeostasis. Our body is very intelligent. Our body is telling us what is lacking, what is needed. So when something is needed, it creates a certain kind of a biological drive so that we know, right? So we know when we are hungry. Everyone knows, even really young babies. Really young babies know when they're hungry, they're thirsty. So those biological drives are the signals that our physical body are telling us what are lacking, what are needed. So and the next process is that when we are hungry, we can have the behavior of eating, right? So we can have a meal and get enough food. And when we get enough food, we are full, or we are satiated. That is a formal word to describe that state. We are satiated. We do not need more food anymore in that moment. So in that moment, we go back to the homeostasis. The biological drive disappears. It's not there. We are not hungry anymore because we already get enough food. So you can see that is the biological drives are dynamic. They are not always there. They are not always not there. They sometimes appear, sometimes disappear. Depends on the deviations from the homeostasis. If the homeostasis is reached, there's no biological drive. When there is deviations from the homeostasis, there is biological drive. So that is what the drive theory tells us. And next, we can go back to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory. We mentioned this theory in week 2, in the first chapter. So we can talk about this theory in more detail in this week. So we can recap this theory. Maslow mentioned that we have the needs. When we live, when we have the needs, we can have all kinds of needs to live. So those needs are the basic nutrition for our life to be alive, right? So imagine that a tree, for a tree to live, what does a tree need? Water, sunshine, soil, or the soil, the water, the nutrition in the soil, and the sunshine, and a certain temperature, certain level of temperature. It cannot be too cold, it cannot be too hot for a tree to live. For humans to live, what do humans need? So Maslow mentioned in this theory that we can have a lot of needs for us to live. There can be physiological needs, there can be psychological needs. So they are categorized on hierarchies. Hierarchies you can see on the picture on the right. There are different levels, it's like different levels or different floors. There are different hierarchies. Those needs are. So there can be on the bottom level, there can be physiological needs, and on the hierarchy above it, there is security need, and above the security need, there is social, and above the social, there is esteem need. And on the top, there is self-actualization need. So on the bottom, that is physiological need. That is easy to understand. There is food, water, warmth, and shelter. We need a place to stay, right? So we need enough clothes to keep our warmth in our body. We need enough water and food. So that is a physiological need. The need above that needs is about security. We need to have the safety. We need to feel that we are safe in our living environments. So we need a safety, we need employment, we need assets, we need money. So to have a safe life. So that is that is about security. So we must be safe, right? We need to resist with the danger. In danger, we need to have the ability to deal with the danger. Above the security needs is a social need. So that is about relationships. That is about assimilation to the society. That is about socialization. So we need to have family. We need to make friends. We need to have friends in the society. We need to have the intimacy. We want to have the close and the warm relationships with some people, right? So remember attachment theory. In attachment theory, it mentions that the babies, since they are born, they build really strong and really close emotional connections with their caregivers, with their mothers and fathers. That is the social need. That is the need for intimacy. And also belonging need. So belonging means that we have the tendency, people have the tendency to belong to some kind of social groups. We want to join some kind of organizations or groups so that we can have a feeling that I belong to this group. I belong to the society. I'm not outside of the society. I'm not lonely, and I'm not isolated. That's the feeling. That's the need that people need on this level, on this hierarchy. And above that, there is esteem need. That is about reaching the goals, having the achievements, having the accomplishments, having the self-confidence, having the feeling that I'm able to do something well, having the feeling that I'm good, I can influence others, I can make contributions in the society. That is about esteem. And that is a feeling that I'm a person who is worthy. There is a self-worth inside of myself. So that kind of need is called esteem. There's a concept in psychology called self-esteem. So the esteem need is basically the need for having higher self-esteem. So self-esteem is the feeling that the self is worthy. There is worth in the self. So above the esteem need is on the top level. On the top level, there is self-actualization. So what is self-actualization? Self-actualization is the inner fulfillment. So that's the experience or feeling that one is become one wants to be. So it's become themselves. Just in other words, like the simpler words that describe the self-actualization is that the person is becoming the true self. The person is becoming the true real self. If the person wants to be something, they're becoming like that. For example, Michael Phelps. Michael Phelps wants to swim, want to be a professional swimmer. He is becoming professional swimmer. He is swimming. He is becoming a good swimmer. He wants to be a good swimmer, and he is becoming a good swimmer. In that process, that is self-actualization. So when he is becoming a very good swimmer, in that process, self-actualization happens. Self-actualization, that need is satisfied. He is not satisfied just to be like a random swimmer. He wants to be better, better, and better. So there's no end. There's no top. If he wants to be a good swimmer, he has become better, better, and better. If somebody wants to become a musician, he or she is becoming better and better. So in simpler words, self-actualization is just a need that every one of us wants to be our true self, wants to be the best of us, just want to be the best of us, or be the true ourselves. And in Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory, he believed that there are hierarchies. Now, there are not random classifications or categories. Why there are hierarchies? Because when the lower needs are satisfied, once one starts to address the need on the higher level. What does that mean? It means that if the needs on the lower hierarchies are not satisfied, people are focusing on satisfying the needs on the lower hierarchies. When the needs on the lower hierarchies are satisfied, people transfer their attention, transfer their focus. They focus on the satisfaction of the needs on the higher hierarchies. For example, when one person's physiological needs are not satisfied, what he's focusing on, what is he doing? He is focusing on get enough food, getting enough water, get enough warmth. That is current focus for that person, because the physiological needs are not satisfied yet. When the person's physiological needs are satisfied, that means which means that they already get enough food, enough water, enough shelter, enough warmth, and everything is well in terms of the physiological needs. When all these needs are satisfied, on the physiological hierarchy, one starts to pay attention to the security needs. One starts to think about, oh, I'm not safe yet. I want to be safe. So he's driven, or he is really passionate, or he's motivated to satisfy the security need. Once the security need is satisfied, the person starts to pay attention to the social need. Start to think about, oh, I do not have family yet. I do not have friends yet. I want to join some kind of social groups. So once the security needs are satisfied, people start to be motivated to satisfy the social need. So the esteem need is the same case. So when the social needs are satisfied, people start to pursue esteem needs, start to pursue contribution to the society, start to think about self-worth, think about the social status, think about the personal achievements and stuff. When the esteem needs are satisfied, people start to think about self-actualization. They start to think about what is the best one I can be? What is my true self? So you can see that people start to pay attention or start to address the needs on the higher and higher hierarchies. So self-actualization is just that's the desire or the need to become because the best of because the best of somebody reaches somebody's full potential. So what is the full potential of that life of that person? That's reached the full potential of that person. So that process is self-actualization. And there's one difference between self-actualization and other needs on the other hierarchies. So for the needs on the other hierarchies, for example, esteem, social, security, and physiological, those needs can be satisfied. Food can be enough, water can be enough, safety can be enough, friends can be more enough, self-worth can be enough, but self-actualization cannot be enough. There's no top, there's no satisfaction of self-actualization. Every time there is the need of self-actualization. So because there's no limit, there's no end for somebody's full potential. The potential is endless. What is the best one that one can be? The best one can be. There's no top, right? So what is the best? The best is like there's no best. There's always better. You can be better and better and better. Michael Phelps, he can be better and better. He can get more and more medals in the process of pursuing the goals, in the process of becoming best of him. So this is about self-actualization. So, however, there's some kind of criticisms or some kind of some people or some psychologists point out that they cannot find the evidence showing that these needs are in these hierarchies. Maslow believed that all these needs are on hierarchies. The people must pursue these needs from the bottom to the top, right? So they need to satisfy the needs on the lower hierarchies, so that they can pursue the needs on the higher hierarchies. But a lot of psychologists try to find evidence showing that this is true, but they cannot find evidence. A lot of people believe that those needs are just there. People are just having those needs. Those needs are not on hierarchies. For example, when people are hungry and thirsty and do not have enough food for physical health, they also have the need for friends, family, and belonging. Some people believe that social needs also exist when the physiological needs are not satisfied yet. When the physiological needs are not satisfied, people also have the security needs. Sometimes they're just there. They're not on hierarchies. That is the criticism about this. So the question here for you to think about is, do you think these needs are on hierarchies? Or you don't think these needs are not on hierarchies? They are just there. People just have those needs at the same time. Or these needs are on hierarchies. What do you think of? So for me, it's hard to, I do not know the answer of this question. I think Maslow's is right to some degree, and I think other people like who have the criticisms are also right to some degree, because based on my personal experience, I realize that sometimes I'm hungry, I'm thirsty. I also have the social needs. I also have the security needs, right? So those needs are the needs that we need to have at all moments. But sometimes when I'm so hungry, I just focus on the physiological need. I just want to get meal. I do not really focus on security, social or instinct, or self-actualization. Probably the attention is more on the lower level, lower hierarchy needs, when the lower hierarchy needs are not satisfied. But at the same time, they all exist at the same time. That's my personal belief or personal understanding of this. Okay, so this is a question that that is worth thinking about. So you can think about, oh, is Maslow right or wrong, and to what degree he's right about this theory. So let's go to next topic. So next topic is about sexual orientation. Sexual orientation, that is the people's emotional and erotic attraction toward another individual. So there are different styles or different orientations in this degree, in this angle. So people might be attracted towards another person, fall in love with some individuals, but people might be fall in love with the people who have the same sex with them. People might fall in love with the people who are different, who have the different sex with them. So I believe that everybody knows what homosexual is and heterosexual is. So homosexual means the people will love or be attracted toward the person who has the same sex with that person. That is homosexual. And in the population, in every society, there are less number of people who are homosexual. There are 3% to 10% of people in the population are homosexual in every society. So there is like a investigation in every country, in every society, in every culture. The number is between 3% to 10%. In some countries, in some cultures, there are more, the percentage is higher, like 10%, but like no more than 10%. Most people in the society are heterosexual. Heterosexual means that people are attracted, are passionate about the person who has the different sex with them. So heterosexuals, in heterosexuals, men loves women, women loves men, right? So in homosexuals, men loves men, women loves women. And also there are a certain percentage of people in the population who are bisexual. That is also existing in the society. So bisexual means that they are both homosexual and heterosexual. It means that they can be attracted toward people who have same sex or people who have different sex. They can do both. And the next question is like, what can determine sexual orientation? And before, people might believe that that is because of cultural influences, or that is but because of their personal experiences. They have the experiences to be homosexual, so they are homosexual. Or family backgrounds have a heavy influence on people's sexual orientation. That's the belief that people used to have. But later, the studies, the scientific studies found that those factors are not really important. Personal experiences or family backgrounds are not important at all. The most determining or most important factor that determines sexual orientation is genetic makeups, is genes. The DNA, the genes determine a person is homosexual or heterosexual or bisexual. That is totally determined by the genes. Or in other words, people are born to be homosexual or heterosexual or bisexual. Yeah, so the misunderstanding is that sexual orientation is a personal choice. No, it's not. Reality is that sexual orientation is not a personal choice. It's a stable characteristic that cannot be changed. It just like a person has 2 legs, 2 arms. That is very stable characteristic, right? So it's not a choice to choose to have 2 legs or 2 arms. It's just born with 2 legs and 2 arms. Sexual orientation is just like that. That is about sexual orientation. And next, we can talk about emotion. So we have talked about our theories in motivation. So now we can talk about emotion. So emotion is another big topic in this week. So what is emotion? Emotion is an affective state. It's a subjective state. It's a personal state. That is a state. That is subjective. So people have some kind of a subjective experiences, have some kind of feelings. That is emotion. That kind of state is intense, relatively intense, is very strong. When the emotion comes to your mind, that feeling is very strong, relatively very strong. And when does emotion occur? Sometimes we meet something, we have some kind of experiences, we meet a lot of events. In response to this experience or in this life events, we have emotions. So emotions occur because of the response, our responses to some kind of experiences in that moment. So that is emotion. And that is a subjective feeling. There's feeling, it is subjective. It does not exist outside our mind. It does not exist in the physical world. It just exists in our mind. And there is another concept or thing that is really close to emotion. Sometimes we talk about it. That is called mood. M-O-O-D, mood. So what is mood? That is different from emotion. It's also a state of us, also a subjective state, also a affective state. That is also a feeling. There are a lot of feelings in that state. But that affective state is not that intense, and it lasts very long time. It's a prolonged affective state. It's not that short like emotion. So emotion is always very short because it's a response to a certain event in life. But mood is relatively long. It's a long affective state, but the intensity is not that high. For emotion, the feeling is very strong, but the mood is not that strong. The mood occurs not because of responses to life events or experiences. No, it just occurs without any reasons. It's just there. It just occurred to your mind, to our mind. It's just there. So mood is different from emotion. Emotion is quick, is strong, is there's reason for why certain emotion happens, but for mood is long, it's not strong. There's no particular reason for why particular mood is happening. It's just happening. So that you can tell the difference between emotion and mood. The next question is, why do people have emotions? What is, or the other way to ask this question is like, what are the functions, or what are the benefits of emotions? Emotions can trigger actions. Can trigger actions. It's like a motivation, right? So emotion is in this sense, emotion is really like motivation. So motivation motivates us to have certain behaviors. Emotion also can drive us, can trigger our actions, can make us to have certain actions to do something. For example, if we are angry, there's a lot of anger in our mind in that moment. We do something to reduce the anger. Sometimes there is the obstacle in our life. For example, if we have taken an exam, we do not get a very good grade. Sometimes we are angry. We are so angry about this grade. The action that we might do is we learn harder. We work harder to get a better grade next time. So that anger, that emotion can trigger the action of studying harder, studying better, and and getting a better grade next time. So emotions are useful because they can make us to have certain actions. And also the benefit or function of emotion is that emotions make us to be aware of ourselves, to be aware of our current psychological states. For example, we sometimes are sad. Why we are sad? We can, that emotion, sadness, can mention us that, oh, something goes wrong, or something is lost. Some people die, or yeah, something is going bad. We are aware of this. If there is no sadness, we sometimes are not aware we lost something. We are not aware something goes wrong. So emotions is a very strong signals that tell us, our brain want to tell us, right now you need to pay attention to something. And you need to pay attention to your psychological states. Something goes wrong or something goes well. And emotion might have other functions as well, but I think the really important functions of emotions are these two. Emotions can trigger actions, can make us to have certain actions. And also emotions are signals that mention us, let us be aware of the current psychological states. So how does the emotion occur? So there is a theory called the cognitive mediational theory. That is a theory developed by the psychological Lazarus cognitive mediational theory. So what is it about? So the basic, really important finding from this theory is that emotions come from the cognitive interpretations of life events. So when we meet some kind of life events, when we have some kind of experiences, we have the interpretations of those events. Something happened. We have the interpretation in our mind. We think about this events. We have the explanation or interpretation of those events. And later, we have emotions. So the cognitive interpretations are called appraisal. So what is appraisal? Appraisal is a process in our mind. That is a cognitive process. It's a thinking process. In this process, our mind is evaluating the significance of the life events. What kind of a significance of life events? The significance of that life events in terms of our own well-being. So we concern our well-being. So when one event happens, we think about whether this event is important for our well-being or not. Does this event threaten our well-being, or does this event improve our well-being? If this event threatens our well-being, to what degree? How strong? How threatening that life event is? If that event improve our well-being, how strong? To what degree? How good the life event is for us? So because we concern our well-being all the time, every time there's life events, we evaluate the degree and the valence or the significance of that event to our well-being. That process is called appraisal. And that process is so automatic. You may ask, I don't think about this. I don't think about every event, whether every event is threatening our well-being or not. I do not realize this mental process in our mind. In most of the times, you are not aware of it. It's just happening. Appraisal process just happening in your unconsciousness. You're not even aware of it. Your brain is finishing. Your brain has finished thinking about it. It's so automatic. It's so quick. So the whole process is like this. Something happened. There's an object. There's an event. Something happens. There is a perception. So we need to get that information, right? So something happened. We need to know that event, right? So there's perception formed in our mind first. So from the sensation, from our eyes, from our ears, we get that information. We form the perception of that event or thing. And later, there is appraisal. There's an interpretation of that event. Think about the mind is thinking about whether this event or thing is threatening my own well-being or improving our well-being. If threatening, to what degree? If improving, to what degree? And that process is happening really quickly. And then the outcome of that interpretation or appraisal is emotion. So emotion comes from the interpretation of some kind of life events. There is a concrete example that helps us to understand how this process works. For example, if there is a lion showing up in front of me, so lion is object, right? So there is life events. So if, for example, if I walk in the wild in Africa, suddenly I see a lion. That is a life event, or that is a object. Object can be a thing, can be a person, action, event, idea, memory. So this time there's a thing, there's an animal showing up in front of me. So what happens next? There's a perception, right? So I need to get the information. Oh, I see a lion. There is a cognition. There's knowledge. Lions kill people. That is knowledge, right? So I know that. That is in my memory. There's a perception of the lion, and there's context. There's stored knowledge about that event. I know that is a lion. I know that our lions kill people. That is the knowledge stored in my long-term memory. And what is the process next? I will have an appraisal, value appraisal, or appraisal, interpretation of this thing or this event. Lions are a threat to my own well-being. So in the process of appraising, my mind is measuring the value of the object, value of the life event. Lions are a threat. What is the emotion that follows that appraisal? There is emotion. Emotion is fear. That is making sense, right? So lions are the threat to our well-being. Lions kill people. So I have the emotion of fear. I'm afraid. I'm afraid of this lion. So you can see in this process, the red words are in the consciousness. The blue words are in the subconsciousness or in the unconsciousness. So the object is in the consciousness. We know there's an object. And emotion is also in the consciousness. We know what emotions we have in that moment. But the process of perception and appraising, these two processes are in the unconsciousness. It's really fast. We don't even realize we are thinking about that. It's so fast. It happens so fast, and we do not have the control of that cognitive processes. Our mind is working automatically, and it's so quick. We see the lion, and we have the fear. Our own subject feeling is that I see the lion, I'm afraid. That's it. But between I see a lion and I'm afraid, between the two processes, there are other two processes, which are the perception and appraisal. So this is basic process of how the emotion occurs based on the cognitive mediational theory. So there is also another example. For example, I'm David. I'm a student at college. I took a test. I got a very good grade in this test. So the life event is getting a grade. And I have the perception of it. When I see the grade, I have a perception of that grade. That grade is 100. For example, I got 100 out of 100. I got 100. That's the perception. And 100 is a very good grade. That is the stored knowledge in my mind. I know that that grade is very good. That is the cognition. That is a perception. And the next, I have a appraisal about that perception, about that event. The grades are good and improves my well-being. It is good for my well-being. It is good for me. It is good for me to reach my goal, to be a good student. So this event is good for us, for me. So good grades are good. So the following emotion is happiness. I'm happy. I'm happy about this. So that's how happiness comes from. That's how happiness occurs. That is also a process of emotion occurring. So that is so this theory is very helpful for us to understand how emotion occurs. So this implication and suggestion is that actually emotions come from our interpretation or appraisal, not directly from the events. Sometimes we believe that something make us to be angry or make us to be happy. That is not really right idea, because based on the cognitive mediation theory, the emotions actually are coming from the appraisal, our own appraisal that we are not aware of. So life events trigger the appraisal. Appraisal creates a certain emotions. So in this process, if the appraisal changes, the emotion might change. Think about this. The same thing happens. The appraisal, if the appraisal is changed, emotion can be changed. So emotion, the real determination, real determining factor of certain emotion is actually our appraisal, our own interpretation of those events. So we'll talk about this in a later chapter about stress. And next we can talk about the types of emotions. So for sure, we all have different kinds of emotions. So actually, psychologists or scientists found that several kinds of emotions are basic emotions for all human beings. It means that everybody in this on this earth have those emotions. They are basic and universal to all human beings. No matter who they are, no matter what cultures they are, they have those emotions. So what are these emotions? These are fear, anger, disgust. Sometimes we feel something is really disgusting. So that is a emotion that we all have. Contempt. Sometimes we contempt, look down upon somebody. That is a emotion of contempt. And there's also sadness, and there's joy, there's interest. So these are seven kinds of emotions that are basic and universal to all human beings. Everyone has these kinds of emotions. So let's talk about fear. What is fear? Fear occurs in a situation that the person believes the situation is dangerous to his or her well-being. So when one thinks that this thing or this event is threatening his or her well-being, fear happens. Just like the example we just mentioned, we see a lion, I see a lion, and lions kill people, I believe. And lions are threatening my own well-being. So I have the emotion of fear. And another emotion, the second emotion that we can talk about is anger. So when does anger occur? So it happens when there is a obstacle to one's goal pursuit. So when we are pursuing some kind of goals, we want to get something. We are working hard to reaching that goal. However, there is an obstacle. There is some kind of a difficulty happening. There's a obstacle on our way. In that situation, anger happens. the anger happens is because we want to correct that mistake. There's a mistake, there's an obstacle. We want to remove that obstacle. We want to correct that mistakes. So that in that case, anger occurs. For example, we are harmed by other people. Other people are intentional. They are intentional to harm us. So we are angry because why, or that makes sense, right? So other people are harming us. We want to maintain our health, social health, and physical health, but some other people are harming us. That is an obstacle. So we are angry. Sometimes some people betray us. We are angry. Sometimes some people criticize us. We do not want those criticisms, so we are angry. Sometimes there is pain. Sometimes there is injustice. Sometimes we think that something is unfair. That person is unfair. In that case, we are also angry. So you can think about these cases. In those cases, we think that we shouldn't get those. We shouldn't get those, but we get those. So there is an obstacle to our goal pursuit, so that we are angry. And the third universal and basic emotion is called disgust. Sometimes we think that something or some people are disgusting. It occurs, it's a response to an object that is contaminated. So we think something is contaminated or deteriorated, so that we think something is disgusting. The example is a spoiled food or contaminated water. We think that, oh, that water is disgusting. That food is disgusting because that food is, or water, or contaminated. So you can see that the emotion of disgust is very useful, right? So we can identify something is the stuff that we must keep away of, or is something is the thing that we cannot take inside. We can have a feeling of disgust. We can feel something is disgusting. The emotion of disgust help us or help our ancestors to keep away from those contaminated things, especially contaminated food. And the next emotion is contempt. It occurs when when people feel that we are morally superior to another person. That emotion is basically about the relationship between us and another person. If we think that person is inferior, is morally inferior, is morally wrong, that person is wrong. That person is not really behaving or talking based on the moral standards. So in that case, we can have a feeling of contempt. We look down upon that person. We can have a negative evaluation of that person or that person's behavior. That's the case when contempt happens. And the next emotion, sadness, that's easy to understand. But when does it happen? Why did it occur? Why does it occur? It occurs when there is separation or failure. So when we experience the moment of separation, we are separating from other people that we love, or we fail to do something, or yeah. So in those moments, we can have the feeling of sadness. Sometimes, for example, our family members pass away. Our our cats and dogs pass away, or cats and dogs are missing, or something is missing, something is which is important for us is missing, we are also sad. Or we must be separated from the people we love. We must go to college, or yeah, some kind of friends leave us. We are sad because there is separation. Or sometimes we fail to do something. There's a lot of failure in our life. And every time there's failure, we might have the feeling of sadness. So that is the moment that sadness occurs. So what is a benefit, or what is the usefulness of sadness? Why sadness exists? Because sadness can help us turn our attention internal or inward, can make us to have more personal reflection. When we have separation, when we have failure, we need to have a personal reflection. We need to think about what's going wrong, right? So what is wrong? What is right? We need to think about it. We need to have a personal reflection. Sadness also can make us to have a lower arousal in our body. It means that sometimes we are so excited, we are so activated. And sadness, when sadness happens, we are not that activated. We are not that excited, because that is the moment that we need to have personal reflection. That is not a moment to take actions. So get relaxed. Do not do too much. Think about yourself. That is the usefulness of sadness. And the next emotion is called joy. So joy, you can think of it as happiness or pleasure. It happens when there is desirable outcomes. That makes sense, right? So when we get the outcomes that we want, we want to get that, we finally get that. In that moment, there's joy. We're happy. So for example, when we reach the goal, or there's a progress of reaching that goal. When we get the respect, when we have the love, when we fall in love with somebody, for example, we can have the feeling of joy. So joy is basically the opposite of the feeling of anger. So when anger happens, that is the time when there's obstacle of the goal pursuit. There is anger. So when there is progress of the goal pursuit, there is joy. And also the joy is the opposite of the sadness. So when there is gain, when there is success, there is joy. When there is loss and there is failure, there is sadness. When people are optimistic, they think about good things in the future. There is also joy. But when people are pessimistic, means that people think of negative things in the future. They are sad. So joy and sadness are the opposite. And the last emotion is interest. It happens when there is some kind of novelty in the environment. Some kind of new things occur in the environment. There is interest. Or there is the chances to get some new information. There is also interest. So we know something, and there's something more that we can know. We can be interested in those new information. Or there are some kind of situations that our needs and well-being, our needs can be satisfied, or our well-being can be improved. In those situations, we are also interested, right? So, for example, there's a situation that we can know a better way to get a better grade. We are interested because we want to get that. Our needs can be satisfied. Our well-being can be improved. And also, the interest, this emotion is different from joy. The key difference is that joy occurs when the motivation is satisfied, right? So that if there is progress of the goal pursuit, the motivation is satisfied. We have the motivation and we are satisfied. There is joy. So joy is the outcome of the motivation. But interest occurs when the motivation is there. When we are motivated to do something, when there is like environmental novelty that we want to know about the new stuff. In that process, when the motivation is there, interest happens. So that's different. Joy occurs after the motivation, but interest occurs during the motivation. And next, we can talk about the particular theory about emotion. That is called the broaden and build theory of positive emotions. So the key word here is broaden and build. This theory actually help us to know about the benefits of positive emotions. So this theory tells us why we need to have positive emotions. So the basic knowledge in this theory is like this. So the positive emotions. So what are the positive emotions? Joy is a positive emotion. Interest is one of them. Contentment is also a positive emotion. Pride is also one of them. Love is also one of them. There may be other kinds of positive emotions, such as calmness. So sometimes we are calm. That is also an emotion. So there are all kinds of positive emotions. And some emotions are negative, such as sadness, such as anger, yeah, such as disgust. So those are negative emotions. But this joy, interest, pride, love, and contentment, these are positive emotions. So what do positive emotions do? First, it can broaden somebody's thoughts and actions, the momentary thought action repertoires. So what does it mean? So positive emotions in that moment can make the person to have more thoughts and actions. And they can be more creative, more thoughts and more ideas and more actions. So what is the following consequence? Because of there are more thoughts and actions, it can help the person to build more personal resources, including physical resources, intellectual resources, social resources, and psychological resources. So physical resources such as better physical health, a stronger body, that's a physical resource. And intellectual resource means that there's higher intelligence, more knowledge, more skills, and so forth. And the social resources can be like more good relationships, more connections with other people. The relationships can be better. Psychological resources can be like a better ideas or better psychological states. Those are psychological state resources. So positive emotions in certain moments can increase the thoughts and actions in those moments, moments. And in the long run, if there are more and more positive emotions, there are more and more thoughts and actions in a lot of occasions, in a lot of moments. Gradually, those positive emotions and thoughts and actions help the person to have more personal resources in terms of physical, in terms of intellectual, social, and psychological. So help the person to build personal resources. So the following consequence of more personal resources is more positive emotions. Because they have a better health, they are more intelligent, they have a more good relationships, they are more optimistic, for example. They have more resources to have a better life. As a result, they have a better, they have more positive emotions. They are happier, and they have more joy, interest, and so forth. So you can see that the positive emotions bring more creativity, thoughts and actions, bring more personal resources, and bring more positive emotions. So positive emotions bring more positive emotions and bring more and more positive emotions. That is like a spiral. So there is a this picture that shows that there's an upward spiral for positive emotions. You can see from this picture that there are positive emotions. There's joy, love, interest, happiness, and so forth. That broaden the thoughts and actions. It's like there in the storage, there are some kind of thoughts and actions. Positive emotions can broaden, expand the inventory of thoughts and actions. People can have more ideas, more thoughts, and more actions, more behaviors. And because there are more thoughts and actions, and bring more personal resources, help to build more personal resources. Because of the more personal resources, create more positive emotions. So positive emotions created the upward spirals, bring a lot of good things to our life. So that is the basic process of broaden and build theory of positive emotions. I think this theory is not mentioned in the textbook, but I think this theory is very interesting to know because this theory just tell us what are the benefits of positive emotions. Positive emotions are very important in our life, just like intrinsic motivation. So we just mentioned like intrinsic motivation is very important for our life. It brings performance and brings pleasure and stuff. But also positive emotions are very important. It brings more creativity, more thoughts and actions, and more personal resources. Yeah. So it's a really good theory to know about. Okay, so that's all the stuff for this week. So we have talked about motivation, we have talked about emotion. So we need to know these things for this week. So we need to know the meaning of these concepts, including motivation. We need to know what motivation is. We need to know these two types of motivation, intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. We need to know these two kinds of motivation. We need to know the difference between them. And next, we need to know the concept of self-actualization. That's the concept in the hierarchy of needs theory. And we need to know what emotion is. We need to know what emotion is. And next, we need to know appraisal, the concept of appraisal. I guess you haven't heard of this concept before, but before learning in this course. But appraisal is very important concept to know about in the cognitive mediation theory. And we need to know the amount and the names of basic emotions. We just talk about the 7 basic emotions. We need to know all of them. Like we need to know the names. We at least know what they are. And next, we need to have a basic understanding of the 2 theories in motivation. The one is the hierarchy of needs theory, and the other is the drive theory. Okay, so that's all the stuff for this week. And in this week, we also have another video that in which I will go over all the stuff, all the important concepts for the second midterm, because in next week, the week following this week, will be the second midterm exam for this course. So this week I'll upload another video that in which I will go over each of the knowledge points, each of the key points that will be covered in the exam, in the study guide. So I'll go over the study guide for the second midterm in another video. Yeah, so after learning the stuff in this week, you can start to review for the second midterm for next week. And see you later.